this is one of the most important developments from a geostrategic standpoint. It's much more than a photo opportunity. India and Australia are very close strategic partners, but the fact that the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been given a guard of honor on board India's first made in India aircraft carrier, the Vikrant, is very significant. It comes just a couple of months before India and Australia hold the Malabar series of naval exercises, which will be held off the coast of Australia for the first time. China will be watching this very, very closely. Remember, China has a growing presence in the Indian Ocean region. Australia extremely concerned about that. They've recently they are going ahead to purchase, for the first time in history, American nuclear-powered attack submarines. 5 of them will be acquired over the next several years. America has never sold a nuclear-powered attack submarine to anybody else. But the fact that the naval dimension of the relationship between Australia and India is what the Australian PM is looking at, very, very significant indeed. Let's go full frame to this and listen in to this guard of honor. Receiving a guard of honor on board INS Vikrant.
Excuse me?
As we stay with these shots, let's just listen in, and I have a few more key points over here. Right now, in remarks which have been issued just in the last few minutes, the Australian Prime Minister has said, "I'm honoured to be here today on the newly commissioned Indian designed and manufactured INS Vikrant at the invitation of Prime Minister Modi. My visit reflects my government's commitment to place India at the heart of Australia's approach to the Indo-Pacific and beyond. India lies at the heart of Australia's approach to the Indo-Pacific and abroad. While here, I have had the great pleasure of meeting with the talented and highly professional men and women of India's Navy. It's made me reflect that strong defence relationships are forged over time and by many. But arguably, what lifts defence relationships to new levels is the resolve and foresight of those who see the relationship not only for what it is, but for what it could be." He then speaks about Prime Minister Modi being one such person. The India-Australia partnership is one that is of increasing strategic importance as we navigate the challenges of our region together. For Australia, India is a top-tier security partner. The Indian Ocean is central to both countries' security and prosperity. That is the big takeaway in terms of what Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, has had to say. For Australia, India is a top-tier security partner. More significantly, this Indian Ocean is central to both countries' security and prosperity, and there has never been a point in both of our countries' histories where we've had such a strong strategic alignment. We both depend on free and open access to sea lanes in the Indo-Pacific for our trade and economic well-being, and we share an unwavering commitment to upholding the rules-based international order and ensuring the Indo-Pacific is open, inclusive, and is prosperous. I'm pleased to report that there's never been a busier or more productive time in our defence and security relationship. He's gone on to speak about Malabar, and he speaks, as I mentioned, that these exercises will be done off the coast of Australia in a couple of months from now. So this is, I'm pleased to announce formally on board the magnificent Vikrant that later this year Australia will host exercise Malabar for the first time, and India will also for the first time participate in Australia's Talisman Sabre exercise. It's a great privilege to welcome India's Navy to Australia in August, and I thank them again for hosting me here. So this is an extremely important statement from the Australian Prime Minister on board India's aircraft carrier, the INS Vikrant. India operates 2 aircraft carriers, the Vikrant and the Vikramaditya. The Vikrant is made in India. Vikramaditya was acquired from Russia many years back. But the remarks over here reflect what we are seeing in terms of a strategic engagement between India, Australia, Japan and the United States, members of the Quad group of nations, all of which have very serious concerns about the growth of China as a maritime power. Remember, the Chinese Navy is the largest navy in the world now, and all nations that I mentioned in the Quad grouping have concerns about them. But remember, Quad is not strictly a military grouping, though the Malabar series of exercises do involve the Quad nations. What is more directly a military sort of grouping in the Asia-Pacific region is what is called AUKUS. That includes the United Kingdom as well, Australia and the United States. India is not part of that grouping. We choose to be much more independent in our foreign policy thinking. However, the fact that India has our own security concerns, China lies at the heart of those concerns in the Indian Ocean region, is a sentiment echoed by Australia. On the left-hand side of your screen, the Australian Prime Minister on board the Tejas naval light combat aircraft, the naval variant. He got onto the cockpit, checked it out with one of the test pilots involved in the development of that program. Remember, he's had a very hectic day today, has the Australian Prime Minister. He was at the Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, where India and Australia kicked off the final test match series of the Gavaskar border series. And then after that, he hopped onto a helicopter and then flew to India's aircraft carrier. On the right-hand side of your screen, you're seeing images of the hangar of INS Vikrant. That's where many of the MiG-29 fighters will be stored once they're all ready for service. The Vikrant is still at a fairly preliminary stage of induction into the Indian Navy. Yes, it has been commissioned, but it's only in the last couple of weeks that full-fledged trials on board the Vikrant, which involves landing fighter aircraft on board, has started. So on the right-hand side, you see the Vikrant, but on the left-hand side, a little bit about what we saw earlier on, the Prime Ministers of both countries at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, I beg your pardon, enjoying that wonderful test match between India and Australia. So India and Australia building on this close relationship. Let's face it, at one level, that cricket rivalry has been at the heart of what has been a very, very close relationship indeed. It's something that's been acknowledged for decades between both countries. Cricket so important as a force that brings both countries together. But the increasing concern about a common threat, the Chinese threat in the Indo-Pacific region, is what has also brought India and Australia together. I'm going to go back through one or two of those statements. As on the right-hand side of your screen, you see the Australian Prime Minister in the front cockpit of India's naval Tejas fighter aircraft, checking out the Tejas. He says, "There's never been a point in both our countries' histories where we've had such a strong strategic alignment. For Australia, India is a top-tier security partner. The Indian Ocean is central to both countries' security and prosperity. We both depend on free and open access to sea lanes in the Indo-Pacific for our trade and economic well-being." So those key points are mentioned by Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, who's over here in Indian waters in the Arabian Sea on board INS Vikrant, India's first made in India aircraft carrier, accompanied by the Navy Chief, the various chiefs of the Indian Naval, the Commander-in-Chief of the Western Naval Command, the Southern Naval Command. I believe they're all over there. MiG-29K fighter, also a Sea-King helicopter. Those are a couple of the aircraft which will be deployed or already are deployed on board INS Vikrant. So that's a quick look at what we are looking, India and Australia, Priyanshi, really building up on that strategic relationship.
Right. And Vishnu, interestingly, it's the first visit by a visiting Prime Minister on board INS Vikrant.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Modi has been here on a couple of occasions. I think the President may have been on board Vikrant as well, but it's the first time that, we've opened this up to a visiting Prime Minister. And so it is very much a sign of this very close relationship between India and Australia. This is sending a signal. Don't look at this as a photo op. That's what a lot of people might say, that, this is a made in India product. We've done well for ourselves and we want to showcase the engineering prowess of India. But no, it's a lot more substantial than that. That aircraft carrier, and perhaps more Indian aircraft carriers in the future, the Navy certainly wants more, will be at the heart of carrier battle groups, which will see interoperability with the Australian Navy, with whom we've already built up a fair element of professional competence and joint operations. A combined fleet involving the United States, Australia, India and Japan would be extremely formidable, particularly in light of what we are seeing, a massive growing Chinese naval presence in the Asia-Pacific region. Already China has the largest navy in the world presently, and in the next couple of decades they will have exceeded the size of the US Navy, which was the supreme navy since the Second World War, by more than 149, 150 ships, and that is absolutely huge. The way a growing, evolving Chinese navy will be countered is by the combined strength of several countries. Let's listen in.
At the invitation of Prime Minister Modi. My visit reflects my government's commitment to place India at the heart of Australia's approach to the Indo-Pacific and beyond. Whilst here, I have had the great pleasure of meeting with the talented and highly professional men and women of India's Navy, and I want to thank the Admiral, the Captain and others who have made us feel so welcome here today. It made me reflect that strong defence relationships are forged over time and by many. But arguably, what lifts defence relationships to new levels is the resolve and foresight of those who see the relationship not just for what it is, but for what it could be. One such person is my friend, Prime Minister Modi. I'd like to thank him today, not only for his kind invitation for me to visit this landmark capability, but for his dedication in driving forward our defence and security partnership. A partnership that is of increasing strategic importance as we navigate the challenges of our region together.